Now then, I'm going to go straight into, this was a bit of a runaway success, I think.
Yep.
And I want to ask you about a couple of the experiences that you had when you were releasing the film, and were you aware that it was going to be as huge as it became?
No. It was a very modest expectation that we had. It was a very modest budget. It was a modest schedule. It was modest in every way, it took everybody completely by surprise. And I remember there's a moment in any film which is when the ritual humiliation is at its very highest. And that's when you go and you show it, nearly always in America, to a test audience who have no idea what it is. There's been no advertising, the ground hasn't been laid in any way whatsoever. It's simply lumped in front of them raw. And it's always awful. And this, for just for once, they started laughing right at the beginning, where James Fleet comes downstairs to breakfast with Kristen, and he does a little stumble on the stair, and somebody laughed down in the, I remember the cinema and everything, the cinema's still there, in the left-hand front, and then they didn't stop. And they couldn't, there was nothing to talk about after the screening. Usually there's this kind of wrist slashing, 2 hours worth of misery. There's nothing to talk about.
No wrist jokes at all.
No.
Gosh, that's harsh. If it's okay, I'd like to talk to you about Hugh Grant as well. Because this was he'd been in some things, he'd been playing sort of evil characters, or the Englishman. I think there was a Nazi in there, possibly.
Sure.
But this was the film that really launched him as Hugh Grant, romantic leading man. How did you find Hugh Grant? How did you decide? How did you and Duncan and Richard decide that this was your guy?
Well, we found him at the end of a very long list. We saw everybody, and we pretty much read everybody. And if you are not getting satisfied, as I was not getting satisfied, to start with, people begin quite quickly not to understand why you're not getting satisfied and to begin to be frustrated by that. So producers and writers and that sort of thing were beginning to be frustrated. Why didn't I like such and such or such and such and such? And I, of course, wasn't sure myself, except that, aside from everything else, Hugh was lovely looking. He had this wonderful hair, which was a factor, real factor. But what he could do, which I felt that nobody else could, he could speak it very precisely. It's all word jokes. Richard doesn't write things in visual jokes at all, really. A little bit maybe, but mostly it's word jokes. And he had said to me, if we do any work on the script, you mustn't expect that I will do anything other than write in the form of a joke. It will always be a joke. And what that means is precision. He has to speak it precisely. And Hugh simply had the trick of speaking it precisely. You remember that last scene in the rain? Well, that's... of course you remember. You just sat through it.
Yes.
That's fire brigade rain. So it comes down in chunks the size of my thumb, right? They just point their hoses up in the air and you wait for it to hit the ground. And so the sound is always ruined and has to be completely remade in a sound studio afterwards. And we shot that very late. And during the film, Hugh had developed this stutter. He constantly backs and fills and twos and throws and all of that. That's how the character is, because he can never make his mind up. It's about a man who can't make his mind up. And I thought what hell it was going to be when we came to the replacement of the sound. And he went on and he did it in 2 takes, bang, just like that, the whole scene. He said, no, give me the whole scene. And he just did it. And it's because he, A, rehearses obsessively, which is not always the case with actors on film. But also he just has a brilliant memory for what for the way he speaks. And so the thing with him was that he could speak the jokes and they were clear, and he saw where they were funny and where they weren't funny. He saw what to do and what not to do. And he was the only one who had that wonderful facility for speaking the dialogue. And so we were going to make the film in year 1, and then we couldn't raise the money, and we delayed until year 2, and then we delayed a little bit more, another kind of 3 or 4 months, because Hugh wasn't available. He was in Australia making another movie. And people said, well, you'll recast, won't you? And I said, no, we must recast, because he will be irreplaceable. And that's how that happened.
And then the making of the film itself is really quite a short window of time.
Yes, it was.
And I think I remember reading that there was one particular scene that was supposed to take 3 or 4 days, and you managed to shoot it in a couple of hours?
No, that's not...
Is that exaggerated?
Well, no scene in the film took 3 or 4 days, no. We did it in, I can't remember, 32 or 33 days, which is very short. But there was a scene it's where Gareth dies, it's where he does the Highland Fling. And there's a scene in there where he sort of sets the agenda for the group and says, you're all going to go off and you're going to find love and partners and all that kind of stuff. Well, in the normal way of things, it would have been shot quite elaborately, because there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of reactions and what. We simply didn't have the time. And so we lined up in a V shape like that. And we put the camera there, and the camera didn't move, and so everybody leant in and said their bit and then leant back out again, then somebody else leant in and said his bit and then back. And that's how we did it.
Fantastic.
There was simply no time to do it any other way.
The film has a fantastic array of happy couples, mismatched couples, tragic couples. Do you think that Charles is going to be happy after the end of the film? Has he found his love? Do you think he is?
Oh, of course he has. Don't be mean. No, it's just mean to think that he hasn't. Of course he has. You rat. No, of course he has.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I don't know whether there's anybody who hasn't. That's the point of it, really, is that everybody has.
Absolutely.
But I think we thought that in the end, what it was about, and that why people took to it, was that not everybody is happy, not everybody is in a relationship, but almost everybody has a little handful of friends around them on whom they can rely and to whom they're very affectionate, or they love in some form or another. And it was really the film was about a group of friends and about the subtleties of friendship more than it was about love.
Mm. It was very, very different. It was a brand new type of British rom-com. It really sort of, I don't want to say broke the mold, but it created a new genre within British. Yes. And I was wondering, did you have any films that you watched as a reference point before embarking on Four Weddings and a Funeral, or were you just sort of aware of the history of the genre? Are you a fan of the genre?
Well, yeah, I wasn't very keen on the genre because I didn't want to get sucked down into what? I don't know. Genevieve. I remember there was one film that I absolutely didn't want it to be like, because its affection towards the sentimental institutions of Britishness were sometimes very high. And I had a film that I didn't want it to be like, which I saw again recently, which was called The Titfield Thunderbolt.
Oh yeah.
Which is it's a comedy. It's not a rom-com, but it's a comedy about a railway engine. Oh God! In the world of Michael Haneke, we do a comedy about a railway engine. And so I didn't want it to be sort of twinkly British in that way. Beyond that, I thought it should simply be about the meshing of the characters. So I didn't take a lot of notice of rom-comedy, even though I knew that it was there. I think if you count the pages, that's what Richard felt he could get into 96 pages or however many it was. There was a good deal of disagreement about the title, and I was bitterly opposed to the title. And they said, "Why? You've never heard a title like it." And I said, "They'll count. And if they're not having a good time, by the time they get to the end of Wedding 2, they'll be off." Missing the point, of course, that in fact they were having a good time. But how can I know that? So in the end, we were rather a curious group. There were three of us who in effect did everything on the film. There was Duncan Kenworthy and Richard Curtis and me. Duncan produced, Richard wrote, I directed. But we all had sort of fingers in everybody else's pie, which I must say I found very frustrating from time to time. I hated I didn't like their fingers where I was. But I was royally voted down on the title, and of course they were right. It was a piece of real originality.
Can you remember what the other options were?
No, I can't. That would have been awful. No, I can't. It's shameful, I'm sure, anyway. Yeah, everybody hated it.
Good, not just me.
But it's like the last line of Some Like It. Well, Some Like It Hot is a work of stupendous and heavenly genius. This is for weddings, but the last line of Some Like It Hot, which is Nobody's Perfect, Jack Lemmon takes his wig off and says, "All right, I'll level with you, I'm a man." And the guy driving the boat says, "Well, nobody's perfect." And that's the end of the film. And that was temporary. And Billy Wilder and who was it? It wasn't Brackett, was it? It was I.L. Diamond, I think. They said, "Oh God, look, it's 7 o'clock and we haven't had a drink yet. We'll park it there." And it got parked, and it got parked, and it got parked, and every succeeding version of the script printed it until everyone got used to it. So that's what it became. And people did. Don't think you're the first to say it.
I don't imagine I am.
They hated that line. But nobody could think of anything better, and it was raining in chunks. So, get out of the wet. Yes, we had actually quite a lot. Rehearsal you can get for free, if you're careful with the contract. And yes, we actually had quite a lot of rehearsal. We had a great big read-through, and we had people sort of standing in for, I can't remember who, but I think the main ones were there. And then we did, I don't know, probably about a week, which is not as much as you'd want, but it's what you usually get cut down to. And we did quite a lot. And again, it's the thing of learning how the writing worked and the speed at which it needed to go, and sometimes it could go too fast, And also it was good for the actors to see what the mixture was, that there was a quite a major undertow of gentle, conventional perhaps, but nonetheless something sad underneath it, which made the mixture just very slightly bitter on the tongue, which is a good thing to have. And we got used to that, and we began to see the value of that. And so it's those things, it gets you used to the good bits. And we did, yeah. Well, a little bit, all of it good, because of course it was a very key decision as to what kind of actor we were going to look for. And we saw lots and lots of deaf actors, and that guy, David, I think his name is, was just simply a very good actor. He was also extremely handsome, not dissimilar from Hugh, had the same colouring as Hugh, had the same hair, and he could deliver, and we rehearsed with him. I can't remember whether he's profoundly deaf or not. Not a lot got through, but he lip read a lot, and we had a signer with us all the time. And I think that certainly he felt, of course he did. It was an enormous part, it was and an absolutely key part. And so anybody with a handicap would have felt wonderful about playing that part, particularly as there was absolutely no reference to the handicap at all. It's also one of the great moments that, if anyone knows of anything, let or hindrance, let him now speak his piece, or forever hold his whatever. And then there's a silence, and it's a terrific moment. You don't even know where it came, or nobody knows. The whole church is what, and that was his great moment. So I think they were very happy with it, and we never had any kind of feedback, pro or anti or anything. They simply felt part of it, as they were. Yeah. One of the things that drove me nuts about making the film, although these people are now, I think each of the three of us acknowledges how we severally made each other's fortunes. We were, I'm immensely grateful to Richard. I'm very grateful to Duncan and to Hugh and all of those people, because they made my fortune, as it were. A metaphorical term. So we did share a lot of the decisions, and after some weeks of this, I, who had been brought up in the severe, the director is God school, thought, there isn't time. Let's just roll the punch. Let's say, yeah. So do you like this one? Yeah. Okay. That's where we'll go. Then that became a habit, and it sometimes those disagreements got to be very sharp, and I would go and kick a gravestone or throw a chair or something like that, and when those happened, you would see exactly what displeasure meant to these various characters. And Duncan, who is a double first in English from Cambridge, was always extremely clear and precise. And Richard would tend to sort of shamble, and when you saw Richard start to shamble, you'd know that he was angry. And so those decisions were shared, and I think we would all have felt, in a very small way, amused that it was outside the National Film Theatre. Although we did not know that it was going to be a hit. We had no idea that it was going to be a hit, and certainly no idea of the kind of hit it